hop. Skip it, skip it.
If your childhood smelled like fresh milk on the porch and sounded like the click of a rotary dial, you were lucky enough to grow up in the 1960s, an era where joy came without a screen. The pogo stick revolution.
All over the country, everyone's jumpy. Here at Weybridge, Surrey, they even have a pogo stick sports day. And what a day it is.
The pogo stick defined summer afternoons across America, the closest thing to flying most kids would ever experience. Picture being 8 years old, gripping handles of what looked like a metal contraption designed by someone who understood the physics of fun. The 1960s pogo stick was beautifully simple. A metal frame, powerful spring, and 2-foot platforms. No batteries, no electronic sounds, just pure mechanical magic that turned bouncing into an art form requiring balance, timing, and determination. What made pogo sticks special wasn't just the physical challenge. Staying upright for 5 bounces was worth bragging about. It was the sound. That distinctive boing, boing, boing became the soundtrack of suburban neighborhoods, heard from blocks away. The real magic happened when you found your rhythm. Everything would click, your body syncing with the spring's bounce. Ant farms. Windows into a miniature world. If pogo sticks conquered outdoors, ant farms brought nature indoors fascinatingly. These weren't just toys. They were living ecosystems that turned bedrooms into science laboratories, tapping into childhood curiosity about how the world works. The typical ant farm had transparent panels filled with sand, populated by live ants. But it was really a portal into a different way of life. These tiny creatures created complex tunnel systems that put city planners to shame. What made ant farms captivating wasn't just watching ants work. It was realizing these insects had their own society with rules, roles, and responsibilities. You'd watch worker ants carry impossibly large food particles through mathematically precise tunnels. Fizzy's chemistry set in a tablet.
Just drop me in a glass of water. I make the best-tasting sparkling drink.
Fizzies weren't just candy or drink mix. They were pure chemistry in tablet form, turning every glass of water into a science experiment with delicious results. These small, colorful tablets promised to transform plain water into fizzy, flavorful beverages right before your eyes. The ritual was as important as drinking it. You'd fill a tall glass with cold water, then drop in the tablet. What happened next was pure theater. The tablet would dissolve, sending up streams of bubbles that danced and swirled like a miniature volcanic eruption. In an era before instant, everything became commonplace. Private phone lines, the ultimate teenage dream. Now, let's talk about something that completely revolutionized family life, getting a private phone line. If you didn't grow up in the era of party lines and shared telephone service, you might not understand why. Having your own phone number was equivalent to winning the lottery, but for families in the 1960s, transitioning from a party line to a private line was a major milestone that fundamentally changed how people communicated. Before private lines became standard, many families, especially those in rural areas or smaller towns, shared what was called a party line with several neighbors. Trading stamps, the original rewards program.
That's why we give S&H green stamps. Not just any stamp, S&H green stamps.
Before credit card points and cashback programs, there were trading stamps, and they were serious business. S&H green stamps and blue chip stamps turned routine shopping trips into treasure hunts, transforming mundane errands into opportunities to work toward something special. This wasn't just about getting a little something extra. It was about the satisfaction of delayed gratification and the thrill of working toward a goal, one stamp at a time. The concept was beautifully simple. Spend money at participating stores, receive stamps based on your purchase amount, collect those stamps in special books, and then redeem full books for merchandise from colorful catalogs that were basically wish books for the whole family.
Struggling with can openers? There's always a sharp metal edge. Ouch! Now there's Perfect Can. It opens the safe, easy way without sharp metal edges.
Metal can openers. When opening a soda required skill, before the pull-tab revolution changed everything, opening a can of soda was a deliberate act that required a specific tool and a certain amount of skill. The metal can opener of the 1960s, often called a church key, was a simple but ingenious device that turned the act of opening a beverage into a small ritual that added to the anticipation of that first refreshing sip. These openers were marvels of simple engineering, a metal tool about 4 to 5 inches long with a sharp pointed end for puncturing cans and a flattened edge for prying off bottle caps. Smoking everywhere. When cigarettes were part of daily life, to understand just how different the 1960s were from today, we need to talk about something that seems almost unimaginable now: the complete ubiquity of cigarette smoking. This wasn't just about people choosing to smoke. It was about a culture where smoking was so normalized, so integrated into daily life, that its absence would have been more noteworthy than its presence. Picture this. You board an airplane in 1965, and roughly half the passengers are smoking. The flight attendant offers you a choice between the smoking and non-smoking sections, and the non-smoking section is significantly smaller. Throughout the flight, passengers light up cigarettes as casually as they might chew gum today. Console televisions, the family entertainment center. The television of the 1960s wasn't just an appliance, it was the centerpiece of the American living room and a piece of furniture that families chose as carefully as they would select a couch or dining room table. Console televisions were massive, beautiful pieces of craftsmanship that combined cutting-edge technology with fine woodworking, creating something that was as much about aesthetics as it was about entertainment. These weren't the slim, wall-mounted screens we know today. Console TVs were substantial pieces of furniture, often measuring 4 feet wide and standing on their own legs like an elegant sideboard. The screens were relatively small, typically 19 to 25 inches, but the cabinets themselves were enormous, housing not just the television components, but also large speakers that provided rich, room-filling sound.
Harry, I just love to go to the movies with you because you always have money for popcorn.
Drive-in theaters, movies under the stars. Nothing captured 1960s entertainment quite like the drive-in theater experience. This wasn't just about watching movies, it was a uniquely American social ritual combining cinema, automobiles, and romance under the stars. Drive-ins represented freedom and the perfect merger of two things Americans loved most: cars and movies. These impressive outdoor theaters featured massive screens and rows of speaker posts across large fields. As darkness fell, they transformed into magical spaces where entire communities gathered for shared entertainment.
Excuse me, madam, but have you ever tried Soda Burst?
Oh, yes, I was the first on my block.
Soda fountains, the heart of social life. Before fast food chains dominated every corner, the local soda fountain was where communities gathered to socialize, celebrate, and create memories. These weren't just places to grab a quick drink. They were cultural institutions that served as meeting places, first-date destinations, and informal community centers where news was shared and friendships were forged over ice cream sodas and cherry phosphates. The typical soda fountain was a work of art in itself. Long marble or ceramic counters stretched along one wall, backed by enormous mirrors that reflected the activity and made the space feel larger and more glamorous. Behind the counter, rows of glass syrup dispensers held jewel-toned flavors: cherry, chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, each one promising a different taste adventure. The soda jerk, as the person operating the fountain was called, was part performer, part chemist, and part social director. The process of making a soda was theater worthy of Broadway. World Book Encyclopedia, knowledge at your fingertips. In an era before the Internet made information instantly accessible, the World Book Encyclopedia represented the pinnacle of home education and intellectual curiosity. These weren't just reference books. They were gateways to knowledge that transformed living rooms into libraries and turned curious children into lifelong learners. For families in the 1960s, owning a complete set of encyclopedias was a significant investment that demonstrated their commitment to education and learning. The typical World Book Encyclopedia set consisted of 20 volumes, each one bound in distinctive covers that proclaimed their importance and permanence. The books were substantial, heavy enough that you needed both hands to carry one comfortably, with pages that had a particular smell and feel that readers of the era remember vividly. The paper was thick and smooth, designed to withstand years of handling by curious readers of all ages. Paper maps, navigation as an art form. Before GPS systems and smartphone navigation apps, paper maps were essential tools that turned every journey into an adventure in planning and problem-solving. These weren't just functional items, they were beautifully designed documents that captured the geography, culture, and character of places in ways that digital maps simply cannot replicate. For families in the 1960s, a good collection of maps was as important as having a reliable car. Road maps were works of art that folded into precise rectangles that somehow never seemed to fold back exactly the same way twice. Each state had its own map, often provided free by gas stations or automobile associations, featuring colorful illustrations of local attractions, scenic routes, and points of interest. These maps told stories about places, highlighting historical sites, natural wonders, and cultural landmarks that made each destination unique.
So if your kids are thrilled, I know just how they feel. These wheels are real exciting and bear my name.
Banana seat bikes. Freedom on two wheels. The banana seat bicycle wasn't just a mode of transportation, it was a symbol of childhood freedom, independence, and style that defined the 1960s youth experience. These bikes, with their distinctive long, curved seats and colorful designs, represented everything that was cool and desirable about growing up in that era. They were built for comfort, designed for showing off, and perfectly suited for the kind of neighborhood adventures that made childhood memorable. The banana seat itself was a marvel of design and comfort. Unlike the narrow, hard seats found on adult bicycles, these seats were long enough to accommodate passengers, curved to provide back support, and padded enough to make long rides comfortable. They came in vibrant colors that matched the bike's frame, bright yellow, orange, red, or blue, creating coordinated designs that made each bike a personal statement about its owner's style.
Our national anthem.
National anthem at sign-off, the end of every broadcast day. One of the most distinctly American experiences of the 1960s was the nightly ritual of television stations signing off with the national anthem. This wasn't just a patriotic gesture. It was a shared cultural moment that marked the end of each broadcast day and created a sense of national unity that extended into homes across the country. For families watching television in the evening, the playing of the Star-Spangled Banner signaled that the entertainment day was over, and it was time to prepare for bed. The sign-off sequence was a carefully orchestrated presentation that turned the simple act of ending broadcast programming into a meaningful ceremony. As the final program of the evening concluded, the screen would fade to an image of the American flag, often waving in a gentle breeze or displayed in a patriotic montage. Photographic slides and slide projectors, memories on the wall before digital photography made sharing images instant and effortless. Families in the 1960s captured their most precious memories on photographic slides and shared them through elaborate slideshow presentations that turned living rooms into private theaters. This wasn't just about looking at pictures, it was about creating events that brought families and friends together to relive shared experiences and celebrate important moments. The process of creating slides began with careful photography, often during vacations, family gatherings, or special occasions. Unlike regular photographs, slides required more thoughtful composition and planning because each frame represented a significant investment in film and processing costs.
Good day from ABC Space Headquarters in New York. It is July 20th, 1969.
The moon landing, humanity's greatest adventure. On July 20th, 1969, something extraordinary happened that united the entire world in wonder and amazement. The Apollo 11 moon landing wasn't just a technological achievement, it was a moment that redefined what human beings could accomplish and gave everyone alive, at the time, a shared experience that would bond them for the rest of their lives. For children and adults watching that grainy television footage of Neil Armstrong stepping onto the lunar surface, it felt like witnessing magic become reality. The build-up to the moon landing had been years in the making, with each successive Apollo mission bringing humanity closer to achieving what had seemed impossible just a decade earlier. Families gathered around their television sets throughout the 1960s to watch rocket launches, spacewalks, and orbital missions that gradually built toward the ultimate goal of landing on the moon. Each mission was an event that interrupted regular programming and commanded national attention. The technology that made the moon landing possible was both incredibly sophisticated and charmingly primitive by today's standards. The Apollo spacecraft had less computing power than a modern pocket calculator, yet it successfully navigated the 250,000-mile journey to the moon and back. The television images transmitted from the lunar surface were fuzzy and black and white, but they showed something that no human being in history had ever seen before. Another world with an American flag planted firmly in its soil. Zebra stripe gum, flavor that made a statement. In the colorful world of 1960s confections, zebra stripe gum stood out not just for its bold black and white packaging, but for representing everything that was fun, rebellious, and distinctly different about that era's approach to childhood treats. This wasn't just gum, it was an attitude wrapped in a wrapper that demanded attention and delivered an experience that was as much about the visual impact as it was about the flavor. The wrapper itself was a work of art that perfectly captured the 1960s aesthetic. Bold black and white stripes created a zebra pattern that was instantly recognizable from across a store aisle. In an era when most products used more subdued packaging, zebra stripe gum's design was deliberately eye-catching and playful, appealing to children who wanted their purchases to make a statement about their personality and style. What made zebra stripe gum legendary wasn't necessarily the longevity of its flavor. Like most gums of the era, the taste didn't last particularly long. Instead, it was the intensity of the initial flavor experience and the social currency that came with being seen chewing something so distinctively packaged. The gum itself was often as colorful as its wrapper, with pieces that maintained the zebra theme through alternating colors or patterns. A&W drive-up restaurants, dining in your car. The A&W drive-up restaurant experience represented the perfect fusion of America's love affair with automobiles and its growing appetite for convenient casual dining. These weren't just restaurants. They were social destinations where families could enjoy meals without leaving the comfort of their cars, served by roller-skating car hops who turned food service into entertainment and dining into an event worth anticipating. The typical A&W drive-in was designed with theatrical flair that made every visit feel special. Large illuminated signs announced the restaurant's presence from blocks away, while rows of covered parking spaces provided protection from weather and created an organized system for serving multiple customers simultaneously. Each parking space was equipped with its own ordering system. usually a speaker and menu board that allowed customers to place orders without leaving their vehicles. But the real magic of A&W drive-ins came from the car hops, usually teenage girls who had mastered the art of roller skating while carrying trays of food and beverages. These young women were performers as much as they were servers, gliding between cars with grace and efficiency that seemed to defy physics. Watching a skilled car hop navigate through a busy parking lot, balancing multiple orders while maintaining perfect posture on roller skates, was entertainment in itself.
Revolutionary technology meant to bring the radio on the go.
Transistor radios. Music everywhere. The transistor radio revolution of the 1960s transformed music from something you experienced in specific locations, the living room, the car, the concert hall, into a constant companion that could accompany you anywhere life took you. These small, portable devices weren't just technological marvels, they were liberation devices that freed an entire generation from the constraints of stationary entertainment and gave them the power to carry their favorite sounds wherever they went. The typical transistor radio was a compact miracle of engineering, small enough to fit in a shirt pocket, yet powerful enough to receive clear signals from radio stations dozens of miles away. Most models were about the size of a paperback book, with a telescoping antenna that could be extended for better reception and a simple control layout that made operation intuitive even for children. The sound quality, while not comparable to today's high-fidelity systems, was remarkably good for such a small device. What made transistor radios revolutionary wasn't just their portability, but how they changed the relationship between young people and music. For the first time in history, teenagers could listen to their favorite songs without parental oversight or scheduling constraints. They could take their music to the beach, to friends' houses, on bicycle rides, or anywhere else their adventures took them. This freedom fundamentally changed how young people experienced and shared music. TV dinners, the future of dining. The TV dinner phenomenon of the 1960s represented much more than just a convenient meal option. It was a symbol of American innovation, changing family dynamics, and the country's growing fascination with space-age technology applied to everyday life. These aluminum trays, filled with pre-portioned meals, weren't just food. They were glimpses into a future where technology would make life easier, more efficient, and perfectly suited to the modern American lifestyle. The original TV dinners were marvels of food engineering that solved multiple problems simultaneously. The aluminum trays were divided into compartments that kept different foods separate while allowing them to cook evenly in a standard oven. Each compartment was precisely sized to contain the right portion of meat, vegetables, and starch, creating balanced meals that required no planning, shopping, or preparation beyond removing the packaging and setting the timer.
What do you want? Could I milk, please?
Milk delivery, fresh dairy at your doorstep. The milk delivery service of the 1960s represented a level of personal service and community connection that seems almost magical by today's standards. This wasn't just about getting milk delivered, it was about participating in a system of trust, routine, and neighborhood relationships that made daily life feel more connected and reliable. The milkman was more than a service provider. He was a familiar face who knew your family's preferences and became part of your daily routine. The typical milk delivery began in the early morning hours when electric trucks quietly made their rounds through suburban neighborhoods. The milkman knew each customer's regular order by heart, how many quarts of milk, whether they preferred whole or skim, if they wanted butter, eggs, or other dairy products. Glass bottles with distinctive shapes and logos from local dairies were left in insulated boxes or special receptacles on front porches. wishes, along with any special requests written on small pieces of paper. The glass milk bottles themselves were objects of simple beauty and practical design, heavy enough to keep contents cold, clear enough to show the cream line that separated at the top, and durable enough to be washed and reused countless times. Each bottle was embossed with the dairy's name and often featured attractive typography that made even something as simple as a milk bottle feel special and well-crafted. School cafeteria, food, comfort food for growing bodies. The school cafeteria experience of the 1960s was a daily adventure in institutional cooking that somehow managed to be both memorable and surprisingly satisfying. This wasn't gourmet cuisine by any stretch of the imagination, but it was food prepared with genuine care by cafeteria workers who took pride in feeding hundreds of children nutritious, filling meals that would fuel their afternoon learning and playground activities. The typical school lunch began with a walk through a serving line where uniformed cafeteria workers, usually middle-aged women who knew many students by name, portioned out generous servings of comfort food classics. The menu rotated on a predictable schedule that students learned by heart. Monday was often meatloaf day. Tuesday brought spaghetti and meatballs. Wednesday featured chicken and mashed potatoes. And Friday almost always meant fish sticks or pizza. The food itself was prepared in massive quantities using industrial equipment that could feed an entire school population. Despite the large scale of production, much of the food was prepared from scratch using basic ingredients. Mashed potatoes were made from real potatoes, not instant flakes. Bread was often baked in the school's own ovens. Vegetables were canned or frozen rather than fresh, but they were seasoned and prepared with care.
Your favorite underwater stars. And then watch out.
Who are those attackers?
Looking like
Saturday morning cartoons, the weekly celebration Saturday. Morning cartoons weren't just television programming, they were a weekly celebration that defined childhood weekends for an entire generation. This wasn't simply about watching animated shows, it was about participating in a ritual that gave structure to Saturday mornings and created shared cultural experiences that connected children across the country in their love of colorful characters and imaginative storytelling. The Saturday morning cartoon lineup was carefully orchestrated programming that began early, usually around 6:30 or 7 a.m., and continued for several hours, providing parents with a few precious hours of peaceful weekend morning time while children were captivated by their favorite animated adventures. The shows were specifically chosen and scheduled to appeal to different age groups, creating a natural progression that could hold a child's attention from early morning through nearly noon. The cartoons themselves were distinctly different from today's sophisticated animation. The artwork was simpler, the storylines more straightforward, and the humor often relied on physical comedy and repetitive catchphrases that children could easily remember and repeat. Characters like Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, and the cast of Hanna-Barbera shows became household names and cultural touchstones that transcended generations. Record players and 45 RPM singles, music you could hold. The 45 RPM single record represented everything that was exciting about music discovery in the 1960s. It was affordable, portable, and gave young people the power to own their favorite songs and play them whenever they wanted. These small vinyl discs weren't just recordings, they were tangible connections to the artists and songs that defined the decade's revolutionary musical landscape. The typical 45 RPM record was a marvel of efficient design, containing one song on each side in a format that was both economical to produce and easy for consumers to handle. The records were 7 inches in diameter with a large center hole that required a special adapter for most record players, but their compact size made them perfect for teenagers who wanted to build personal music collections without spending enormous amounts of money. The process of buying a 45 RPM single was an event in itself. Record stores had listening booths where customers could preview songs before making purchases, and the act of selecting which songs to buy required careful consideration of limited allowance money. family. Each purchase represented a significant decision about which music was important enough to own permanently. Rotary phones. When dialing was an art, making a phone call in the 1960s was a deliberate act that required patience and precision. The rotary phone, with its circular dial and satisfying mechanical clicks, turned every call into a small ritual. You'd place your finger in the numbered hole, rotate the dial clockwise until it hit the metal stop, then wait as it slowly returned to position with a series of distinctive clicks. Each number took time to dial, and if you made a mistake halfway through a long-distance number, you had to start over completely. The phone itself was a substantial piece of equipment, heavy enough to serve as a doorstop, built to last decades, and connected to the wall with a cord that seemed to have a mind of its own. But there was something deeply satisfying about the whole process. The weight of the handset in your hand, the mechanical precision of the dial, and the anticipation as you waited for the connection to go through made every successful call feel like a small accomplishment. These experiences remind us that happiness doesn't always come from sophisticated entertainment. Sometimes the most meaningful memories come from simple pleasures and shared activities that build lasting bonds. They offer a glimpse into a time when an entire generation learned to find adventure in their own backyards and magic in ordinary moments. Conclusion: the threads that bind a generation. These 25 experiences wove together a generation's shared identity. From pogo sticks to moon landings, each memory represents when simple pleasures brought joy and communities connected through shared experiences. They remind us that meaningful memories come from simple activities that build lasting bonds.